And another great day, another great week, in fact, in this greatest nation on God's green earth. And what a great beginning for the week where the entire nation is talking about the Founding Fathers. Thank you, Sarah Palin. It's great when we can begin the week talking about Paul Revere and the real purpose of his ride and why he rode and what he said and who he was warning and warning against what exactly. All of this, of course, because of the media circus that seems to surround Sarah Palin. She invites it. She says she was responding to a gotcha question when she gave her own version of Paul Revere's ride. All over the weekend, this has been a huge controversy. She's defended herself on Fox News. Some folks have said this should force her out of the Republican race. I frankly don't think she was ever in the Republican race. Was she right about Paul Revere? Was she wrong about Paul Revere? Was she, well, kind of, sort of, maybe a little bit right about Paul Revere? We will give you the answers to all of that without fear or favor. What does seem to me to be very, very clear is that the media obsession with Sarah Palin and every single burp, not that she burps in public, I'm sure she does not. She is a lady. But every single word, every single statement that she would make, every aspect of this tour, what she's wearing and what her kids are doing, really, the media obsession is sick, and it's weird, and it's unprecedented. And I actually think that one of the reasons that people are rallying to her defense is because there is such disgust at the sort of jackal mentality, at the overreaction to what she initially said. Now, here's the context. She was at the Old North Church in Boston, which is a wonderful historic site. It's part of the Freedom Trail in Boston. For those of you, by the way, who have never actually walked on the Freedom Trail, every American should do this. It is wonderful, and you really do learn a great deal about the Revolution and about the Founding Fathers. And the city of Boston remains a uniquely beautiful city, particularly this time of year. It's a lovely time of year doing it. I'm happy for Sarah Palin and her family. She was on the Freedom Trail, stopped at Old North Church, and somebody, we don't even know who it was, shouted out a question to her. And here's the question. The question was, what have you seen so far today, and what do you take away from your visit? Okay, that was the question. And here is the way it was covered on Channel 7 local news in Boston when the story broke on Friday.
It appears Sarah Palin may need to brush up on her American history. She visited the Old North Church today here in Boston, the focal point of Paul Revere's historic ride, but it sounds like she got a bit confused on the details.
He who warned the British that they weren't going to be taking away our arms by ringing those bells and making sure as he's riding his horse through town to send those warning shots and bells that we were going to be secure and we were going to be free.
This is not an effective summary of Paul Revere's ride. Can we agree on that at least? I mean, no matter how much you want to defend Sarah Palin, it is not the complete depths of idiocy, but it's not an effective summary. This is, if you were giving this answer on a quiz in basic American history, the answer would be problematic. I mean, maybe you get a C- if the professor is generous, but it's not good. It's just not. And this is serious for Sarah Palin. I'll tell you why. One of the characteristics of her fine book, and I like the book a lot, and according to the people who are close to her, she wrote it herself. She wrote a good book called America by Heart, where she talks about the Founding Fathers, and she's not completely ignorant, and she's not completely off base on this. She is more right than wrong about the Founding Fathers. America by Heart is a lovely book, aside from the fact that she endorses the same favorite movie of all time that I do, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. And yes, one of the sites of Mr. Smith Going to Washington, one of the scenes in it, it shows Jefferson Smith, Jimmy Stewart, arriving in Washington and taking a quiet tour of all the national memorials, just as Sarah Palin did with her family when she went to Washington, D.C. Meanwhile, okay, she gives this not so great an answer. Is this as embarrassing as stuff that Al Gore did? Not even close. And he was elected vice president. He just wasn't just a candidate for vice president. You may remember that Al Gore came into Monticello and there were TV cameras there. It's unbelievable video. This is Thomas Jefferson's home. and there's some statues of George Washington and Benjamin Franklin and of Thomas Jefferson. And Al Gore gestures at the statues and he says, "Who are these guys?"
Oh, man, I've never figured that one out.
No, he never did. He never did. What a banana head. He gave a speech in Milwaukee, this putz. I mean, he really did. But Al Gore did it. And he gave a speech and he said, and that's why I think we should go back to our American motto, e pluribus unum, out of one, many. Well, no, it actually means out of many, one. It's not about multiculturalism, as Al Gore was trying to suggest. It's just completely wrong. He was a sitting vice president of the United States. He did that, and the press didn't jump on him the way they are jumping on Palin. The night that this story broke, Bill Maher is on his show, and he's on his show with Larry King and with a professor from Tulane University whose name is Melissa Harris Perry. She's a professor of political science. And he's also on with Rick Lazio, the former Republican congressman from Long Island. And here is the way that they covered the Sarah Palin story.
He who warned the British that they weren't going to be taking away our arms by ringing those bells and making sure as he's riding his horse through town to send those warning shots and bells that we were going to be secure and we were going to be free.
I know you're looking at me, right? I got to carry the water on this.
No, I know. How you doing? I mean...
Well, I totally went into professor mode there. I'm like, yes, come on. You have an answer. Give it to us.
She should not be on vacation. She should be in summer school.
Maybe.
All right, that's Bill Maher. And should she really be in summer school? He went on to talk about his general reaction to Governor Palin.
I think anybody could be president in this dumb country. Okay. Here's my language.
Okay, this is this going to help her? Do you believe that this controversy is going to help her in any way? 1-800-955-1776. She then went on to Fox News Sunday, and she was on with Chris Wallace, and listen to the way she defends her comment previously.
You realize that you messed up about Paul Revere, don't you?
You know what? I didn't mess up about Paul Revere. Here's what Paul Revere did. He warned the Americans that the British were coming, and they were going to try to take our arms, so we got to make sure that we were protecting ourselves and shoring up all of our ammunitions and our firearms so that they couldn't take it. But remember that the British had already been there, many soldiers, for 7 years in that area. And part of Paul Revere's ride, and it wasn't just one ride, he was a courier, he was a messenger. Part of his ride was to warn the British that were already there that, hey, you're not going to succeed. You're not going to take American arms. You are not going to beat our own well-armed persons, individual private militia that we have. He did warn the British. And in a shout-out, gotcha type of question that was asked of me, I answered candidly, and I know my American history.
Okay, this is better, and that's not a ridiculous answer, a ridiculous statement. But when she says in a shout-out, gotcha kind of question, the shout-out, gotcha kind of question was, what have you seen so far today, and what are you going to take away from your visit? I'm sorry, that's not a gotcha question, is it? I mean, she could say anything. She didn't have to go into this thing. Look, a couple of things. Paul Revere did not say the British are coming, the British were coming. He didn't say that. There were eyewitnesses who witnessed Paul Revere's ride, and we have two different written accounts of Paul Revere himself. What he actually said was the regulars are coming out. Why do we know he didn't say the British are coming? Because Americans consider themselves British. They did. They hadn't yet created this new identity as Americans. They were loyal subjects of the king. And they considered the regulars parliamentary troops. They used to claim that their argument was against Parliament. The problem with, I think, some of the conservative instinct here is I'm so torn on this. Because on the one hand, people like Bill Maher are disgusting and stupid. And on the other hand, it's a mistake to try to retroactively go back and say that one of the purposes of Paul Revere's ride was to warn the British. What happened was Paul Revere was taken prisoner, and we have a history tape about this. People can get the tape with the full details about Paul Revere's ride based on a very wonderful book by David Hackett Fisher called Paul Revere's Ride. The details about Paul Revere's ride are fascinating, and they're real, and they are being distorted by Sarah Palin. For someone who's supposed to care about the Founding Fathers, right? That's what the Tea Party movement is about. That's why people dress up as colonists. It's kind of a shame that there's all this confusion right now. We will clear it away and go to your calls. If you think this will help Sarah Palin, give us a call. A lot of people on the left expressing contempt for Sarah Palin because she gave a less than convincing summary of Paul Revere's ride. Let's play it one more time because it's very brief. She was on the Freedom Trail in Boston. She's touring historic sites with her family. More power to her. And somebody shouted out, "What did you take away from this day and what's the message?" And here's what she said.
He who warned the British that they weren't going to be taking away our arms by ringing those bells and making sure as he's riding his horse through town to send those warning shots and bells that we were going to be secure and we were going to be free.
Okay, it's not a good summary. What was the purpose of Paul Revere's ride? Let me do this very quickly. We have a detailed account of this that's available to you. You can get it on MP3 download, or you can get it directly from our website at michaelmedved.com. And we have a whole detailed account of the actual Battle of Lexington Concord. It's an inspiring story. The point is this, is that people knew in advance that at some point or another, the British garrison in Boston under General Gage was going to send out British troops to both confiscate the guns that had been accumulated at Concord, Massachusetts, and to try to arrest John Hancock and Samuel Adams, who were staying at a farmhouse in Lexington, Massachusetts. And it was important. Joseph Warren told Paul Revere. Dr. Joseph Warren was one of the leaders of the Sons of Liberty, was one of the leading patriots in Boston. He told Paul Revere, who was a gifted rider and a trained rider, that, look, if he had to go out and warn people about the British attack, the British were going to leave in the middle of the night so they could capture Hancock and Adams, and they were going to seize the guns at Concord. So people needed to be mobilized. So the Minutemen, the local militias, would come out and they would defend it. It was not the purpose of Paul Revere's ride. Repeat, it was not the purpose of Paul Revere's ride to warn the British. What happened is that Paul Revere, unlike his colleague William Dawes, who had another problem, he fell off his horse, but Paul Revere got basically captured by the British. And the British threatened to kill him unless he told them what was going on. And he said, well, you should be prepared. There are 500 militiamen. Wasn't really that many. Ultimately, it was more than that when it came to Concord. But he said there are 500 militia coming, and they're going to be coming, and they're coming this way, and they're going to be making... And basically, it was an attempt to try to get the British to let him go. And basically, they didn't let him go consciously. There was just mass confusion as the Revolutionary War began, and the battles unfolded at Lexington and Concord. But the idea that Sarah Palin was right, the Boston Herald. Now, look, I have to say this because I think it is relevant. The Boston Herald is part of the News Corp empire. It is owned by Rupert Murdoch, in other words. It's owned by the same people who own Fox News. And they have a headline that say, experts back Sarah Palin's historical account. You betcha she was right. It's not that simple. It is also not true that she showed some kind of unique or distinctive idiocy. The only idiocy is if you're not going to be able to give a quick, clear summary of Paul Revere, don't talk about him. Nobody was asking her specifically to talk about Paul Revere. And also when she talked about ringing bells, she obviously meant ringing church bells, and there were ringing church bells. However, this is being interpreted on the left as if she thought Paul Revere was going around and ringing doorbells. Well, that was not true, and I don't think that's what Governor Palin was saying. The point about all of this is that at a time when Barack Obama is so vulnerable because of economic conditions, it's not a good thing if Republican energies and conservative energies are now spent and diverted, and maybe for the next few days, trying to defend a somewhat eccentric version, at the very least, of Paul Revere's ride.